Hold your breath, okay? Hi, everyone. Thought it would be fun to grab some old stories from the vault. Sometimes oldies can be goodies. We shall see.
Every night, a shadow stands at the end of my bed. Last night, it spoke. It started subtly, a trick of the light, I thought. But night after night, the shadow at the end of my bed took on a more distinct form. A humanoid silhouette that watched me in the dark. I tried to convince myself it was just a pile of clothes, or a trick of the streetlights. But deep down, I knew. It was neither. Everything changed one night when, in a voice as clear as glass yet as cold as ice, it spoke my name. The shadow told me things. Secrets about the world and about myself that I wished I could unhear. It never actually moved. It just stood at the end of my bed grinning. But I could hear it. I could always hear it. It spoke of deals and bargains, of power and price. Each night it would offer, and each night I would refuse. My fear growing alongside my exhaustion. I tried to move, but I was trapped inside my own body. I stopped sleeping in my room. I moved to the couch. It came. I made excuses about being too tired to drive just to be able to fall asleep at friends' houses. But eventually, I would have to go back home. Then one night it didn't appear. The relief was intense and, come to find out, short-lived. I started to see it everywhere, in reflections, in corners, in dreams. I have been so tired for so long I'm starting to give up. I'm sitting at my desk typing this up in case anything happens to me. I can see it in my screen now, just off to the corner behind me. Head tucked into itself and grinning, always grinning. I'm not crazy. It's waiting for me to say yes. And tonight I just might find out what will happen when I do. If you are reading this, please tell my family I love them. Ever received a call from a loved one who passed away? It was a regular Thursday night when my phone rang, displaying an all too familiar name. My heart stopped. It was my brother's number. He had passed away 6 months prior in a tragic accident. The jolt to my system was intense but short. Of course, this number belonged to someone else now. Curious, I answered, only to hear his voice on the other end, clear as day, begging for help. He sounded distant, as if speaking through a veil of static, telling me he was lost and scared. For weeks, the calls continued, each one more desperate than the last. No matter what or how I asked, there was never answers to my questions. He would just continue as if he couldn't hear me. I scoured through old messages and voicemails, comparing the voices on them. Someone I pissed off must be fucking with me. Or that is what I told myself, trying to find a logical explanation. But there was just one thing. The voice was unmistakably his. But how? Strange things began to surround my daily life. Photos of us together would fall off the wall without reason, and I'd find items he owned moved from their places, as if he was still here, searching for something. The TV would switch on in the middle of the night to static, and I'd hear his favorite song hum through the noise, a haunting melody in the silence of my home. One night my phone lit up with my brother's name as I was standing by his grave, a visit I made often in hopes of finding some peace. This time, the voice on the other end wasn't just asking for help. It was angry, accusing me of leaving him alone in that dark place. The anger coming through did something with the static that was normally there. I could hear clearer. His voice was distorted somehow. Although the voice never answered me before, I still asked, "Who is this?" Silence. Then my brother, or whatever this was, in a voice that slithered through the line, said,
"I am he."
He or it began to laugh, a slow reverberation, guttural. This is when my phone died. Later, trying to rationalize the event, I decided I would be the one calling this time. I charged my phone to find all the call logs empty, as if none of it ever happened. The calls stopped as suddenly as they had started. To this day, I wonder if I was speaking to my brother, or something far more unsettling masquerading as him. Know that if you ever receive a call from the number you know should no longer be in service, think twice before you answer. And if you do, listen carefully, for the boundary between our world and the next may be thinner than we imagine. What if you discovered someone living in your house watching your every move, and you never saw them? The day I moved into the old house on the outskirts of town, I was thrilled by its charm and solitude. But soon, that solitude turned eerie. Nights in the house were never quiet. Whispers echoed through the halls. Footsteps tread softly upstairs when I knew I was alone. And shadows danced in the corners of my vision. Objects began to move inexplicably. Books I had placed on a shelf would be found on the floor, pages open, as if someone had been poring over them. My coffee mug would relocate from one room to another, never where I left it. One evening, my skin ran cold with goosebumps as I felt the unmistakable sensation of being watched. The lights flickered, and then darkness. My heart raced. The walls felt like they were closing in. When the lights returned, I heard a huge explosion. I ran. It was then I noticed my front door was open. The noise I heard was my door hitting the wall. Cameras were installed that week for peace of mind. I captured nothing but shadows and, at exactly 3:13 a.m. each night, a static-filled laugh echoed through the speakers, twisting my insides with fear. One night I fell asleep on my couch watching a movie and suddenly I jolted awake. I found a drawing on the floor, a crude depiction of the house with one figure standing by the window, watching another figure on a couch. Beside it, an old toy car I didn't own. I realized then that the unseen tenant wasn't just a figment of my imagination. It was communicating, reaching out from whatever realm they occupied. Desperate for answers, I started searching my home. There were still things from the previous owners that I had not gotten rid of yet, but I found nothing. I realized I had not searched the attic. I told myself that I just forgot, but I knew that was a lie. For weeks, I was ignoring sounds coming from the attic, telling myself it's just an old house settling. When I opened the door and looked into the gloom, at first I felt relief. Nothing was there, just junk. But as I walked further, I noticed an area that looked off. When I moved some boxes, I uncovered a hidden nook behind a false panel. Inside, a makeshift bed, decades-old newspapers, and a small box filled with trinkets and photos of people I didn't recognize. As I stood there, I felt it again, the cold chills going up my arms. My heart was beating so fast and loud I almost missed the whisper that brushed past my ear. It said,
We're all here now.
Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. Panic surged. I turned and fled downstairs only to hear the attic door slam behind me, sealing off the nook and its secrets. I moved out the next day. I'm in a new place now, but every so often I find a note in the middle of my kitchen table with an old toy car right next to it. In a blind rage, I left her at the party, but what I encountered on that drive home turned my anger into sheer terror. The night was a blur of anger and alcohol as I sped away from the party, furious over another argument about my drinking. She had nagged me, like she always did, and in a fit of rage, I yelled at her and left her there. The highway stretched empty before me, my speedometer creeping higher as I let my anger fuel my acceleration. I didn't care about the swerving, my vision slightly blurred, the night seemingly bending around me. Turning the radio on to drown out the echo of our fight, a figure suddenly appeared in my headlights, causing me to swerve off the road. When I came to, it was still night, the dull ache in my forehead suggesting I'd hit the steering wheel. Confused and trying to piece together what happened, I noticed my car was off, but the GPS was glitching uncontrollably. What did I hit to make me slam my head and knock me out? I looked up to see I was still on the highway, this time noticing the dark, towering trees lining the road, which didn't make any sense. There was nothing but a stretch of road in front of me. What did I hit? That's when I remembered the figure. I jumped out of my car thinking someone would be laying broken in the road. There was nothing. Even more confused, I got back in my car. When I turned it on, the beam of my lights landed on a distant figure walking in the middle of the road. Thinking I must have hit them, maybe they were wandering around with a concussion. I drove closer, calling out to the figure, a woman who seemed oblivious to my presence. I drove right up beside her, keeping pace. From my view, I was only able to see the side of her torso. There wasn't any blood anywhere, and nothing seemed to be broken. I only knew this because she kept walking. I asked, "Are you okay?" She ignored me. I tried again. "Hey, are you okay?" Again, nothing. She just kept walking. At this point, my anger rekindled. I was so sick and tired of dealing with stuck-up women. A memory of the party came back then. My girlfriend, thinking she is better than me just because I was drinking, as if she never touched the stuff. I slammed on my brakes and stormed out, shouting at the woman, demanding she pay attention. I yelled at her, telling her she could have killed me and what the hell was she doing out here. Through all my yelling, she stayed silent and just kept walking. Furious, I yelled, "Bitch, I'm talking to you!" She stopped. A satisfied smile tugged at the edge of my mouth. Of course, she stopped. I'd expect nothing less. For a moment, I was thrown back to the party, my girlfriend crying in the bathroom, making a scene. I told her she disgusted me and to clean herself up. Now, looking at the woman in front of me, all that hate came back. She just stood there. Although stopped, she was facing away from me. It was then, in this silence, something made me uneasy inside. Quickly, I dismissed that. I had my target. Walking closer, I told her to get out of the middle of the road. As I reached out for her, she started to turn my way. Finally, the fight I was looking for. That's when my fury turned to terror. The shock of fear that went through me was like nothing I'd ever felt. When she finally turned, I saw her face. Or rather, the void where her face should have been. There was nothing. It was like staring into a black hole, endless and utterly dark. I fell to the ground, and it was like that jolt turned the sound up full blast. I could hear crying. I thought for a second I was making noise. That's when I realized the crying was coming from it, from the void of her face, from the other end of that void, and it sounded just like my girlfriend. Panic took over. I scrambled to my car, threw it into reverse, and slammed on the gas, leaving whatever that was behind me. As I sped back the same direction I came, I convinced myself I was drunk and did not actually see what I thought I saw. I was grasping to any logical explanation there was, to keep me from screaming. I drove for what seemed like hours. The light fog from earlier thickened, wrapping around the road like a living entity. My mind raced. Snippets of memories flashing by, the argument, the lonely stretch of highway, and now, the chilling encounter. The road seemed endless. Finally, I calmed myself enough to sit back in my seat. As I looked up at the clouds through the windshield, movement caught my eye. She was in the back seat. The fear that gripped me was so intense I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I immediately slammed on the brake and jumped out. Nothing. There was nothing in my back seat. My heart slamming in my chest, I looked all around my car and inside. She was gone. Or maybe she wasn't there to begin with. I got a hold of myself again. I took a deep breath, climbed back inside my car, and drove. I realized it didn't just feel like I was driving for hours. I actually was driving for hours. The road was looping back on itself. It was still night, but it shouldn't have been. The road is alive somehow, feeding off me, trapping me in a loop of my own making. Each turn bringing me face to face with my own guilt and the haunting of the faceless woman. Sometimes she is on the road, sometimes in the back seat. Recently, she is right beside me. I have long since dialed all the numbers in my phone. When I do, there is no dial tone. There is no ringing. There is just dead silence. I did discover at a certain bend in the road, at its highest point, I have reception for a brief moment in time. In desperation, I began dialing random numbers on my phone, leaving voicemails in the hopes someone would hear my plea for help. Now, standing atop my car, the last bars of reception flickering. I am leaving you this message. If you're receiving this, I'm on a road that doesn't seem to exist, chased by my own regrets and a horror I can't escape. Please help me. Your reflection is supposed to mimic you, but what happens when it doesn't? I was so excited to be moving into a house after years of apartment living. It's an older house, but at least I don't have neighbors on the other side of a wall. I was lucky because I don't make a whole lot of money and the previous owners had to move out quickly, something about needing to take care of out-of-state family. So that left me with some pieces of furniture that were actually not hideous. But a few weeks after moving in, I noticed something odd about the antique mirror in the bedroom. At first it was small things. A reflection, maybe lagging behind my movements, or expressions that might have not quite matched my own. To be honest, it was easy to shake these off. I'm a single guy, I go out a lot, drink, maybe a little too much sometimes. So you see, any logical person would know all too well how easily things can be dismissed. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I stood in the middle of my room smiling down at my phone at the text coming in from an epic day of bar hopping. And as if someone flipped a switch, I all of a sudden felt like I was being watched. I looked around. Nothing. There was nothing out of place. I went back to my phone, ignoring the pit starting to grow in my stomach. It didn't go away. When I looked up, again, nothing was out of place. But I knew what I was doing. I knew I was avoiding looking at the mirror. Once I knew what I was doing, I forced myself to look at it. It was just me, standing, staring. Then, my reflection winked at me and slowly, so slowly a grin spreading across its face. I watched as it raised a finger to its lips, then turned and walked away, leaving the mirror empty. For a second, it was like my feet were frozen. I was shaking with terror inside, but it was like my feet were not listening to me. A hand slammed on the mirror and I bolted. I practically flew out of my house and broke every speed limit driving to my friends. I banged on their door, over and over and over, until it was opened. My buddy of the past 5 years said,
"Hey man, nice shorts."
I looked down and just noticed I was in boxers and barefoot. When I looked back up, his smirk was fading, and he asked if I was all right. I made up a story about finding a rat next in the leftover furniture. He didn't believe me, but he didn't ask any questions. The next morning, I told him I'd pay him to help me move some of the old junk out of the house. When we got to my house, everything was normal. We ended up moving a couch, table, and some other junk to the curb. As if it was an afterthought, I asked him to help me move the mirror. With every step closer to my room, my anxiety grew stronger. I felt like I was going to throw up. As I walked by the mirror, I did not look directly at it, but I did see my reflection, or it, mimicking what a reflection would do. It was a heavy son of a bitch. We managed to get it out, and just as we came to the curb, I dropped it. I watched it shatter, and a smile tugged at my lips. My buddy said I was stupid, that I could have sold it for a lot of money, but now I would have 7 years bad luck. This time I smiled for real. The relief I felt was intense. That night I slept like the dead. As I stretched awake, I turned to grab my phone and froze. I instantly went cold and sweat broke out on my skin. The mirror. It was back. As if nothing happened. As if I didn't carry it out. As if I didn't see it shatter into a million pieces. As I got up, I noticed writing scrawled from the other side. It read, "Help me." It's been days since I first tried to get rid of the mirror. I've broken it, moved it, covered it. It keeps coming back, and now it appears different in different places. I want to tell someone, but who's going to believe me? I stopped leaving the house. When I did leave, I would see it appear on other reflective surfaces around me, sometimes smiling at me and sometimes doing things much worse. But something has changed these last few days. My reflection is gone, and what has been left behind are messages. I usually see the words, "Help me," or "It's not safe here." I knew I was going insane because I was thinking, maybe it's trapped, and I need to find a way to help them. I mean, yeah, I was fucking terrified, but all it did was move and smile at me. It couldn't speak, or at least when it moved its mouth, I couldn't hear it. So maybe I'm the fucked up one for not actually trying to help. Then, one night, my reflection returned. dragging something or someone behind it. It walked away, leaving the body on the ground on the other side of the mirror. It was then that I realized the messages were not pleas for help, but invitations. I didn't walk any closer, but despite my fear, I leaned a little forward to see if what I thought I was looking at was an actual body. It was then movement at the top of the mirror caught my eye. I thought it was a spider. Once it started moving, I wished it were. At first its forehead came into view, jerky, stop motion-like, then its eyes. My own eyes growing wider. I already knew it would be smiling that smile before its entire face was pressed against the mirror. It threw its head back in laughter and just as suddenly, smashed its face in the mirror. It was so loud, I thought the mirror shattered. It didn't. I stared as it laughed silently while blood ran from its face. As I watched it laugh at my terror, my fear boiled over into anger. I closed the distance and pounded on the mirror. With every hit, I could see its face distort from the vibration of my fist. It didn't move, but I didn't care. I wanted to smash its face. I didn't even know my knuckles broke open until the blood I saw was sliding down was on my side of the mirror. I stood there breathing hard, watching my own blood make its way to the bottom of the mirror. And as I went to step back, I couldn't move. No, that wasn't right. I could move everything but my arm. When I looked up, it had its hand around my wrist. The fear was back. I immediately pulled away, but it had my wrist like a vice. I knew I was about to die then. I pulled with everything I had in me, struggling to just be free. I felt like my arm was going to be ripped off. The pain electrified through my arm to my entire body. Then everything went black. I'm sitting in a dark place. I know now it pulled me through. I'm in the mirror. I see flashes as a light shines into the darkness. I sprint as fast as I can, and I can see glimpses through to the world. I realized I am looking out of different mirrors. I can see people and places, but only when they turn on the light, or it's daytime. I scream and yell and plead, but no one hears me. I am trying to find a way back home. I figured out I can leave messages through the steam of my breath on the mirror. I also learned to write backwards. These messages, these cries for help, are ignored. By logical people telling themselves the same thing I told myself. Although it's dark, I am not in utter blackness. There is a faint, eerie glow. I don't know where it comes from. I suppose light reflecting off of mirrored surfaces. What I do know for sure is that I'm not alone in here. There are others, and they are all just as crazy as it was. When I came to, after being pulled in, I saw what the thing I watched it drag across the floor. It was a body. When I turned it over, it was dead. But it had that same creepy smile. These things, they seem to keep close to their own mirror until darkness sets in. I've seen them tear each other apart, heard the ripping sounds, when there are no mirrors to look into. I still see it, walking in my house, wearing my clothes, on my phone. It also sees me. Last night I saw my friends in my house with it, as if it is me. I pounded on the mirror, absolutely sure I was going to break it. My friends didn't even so much as twitch. Then, it looked at the mirror, me, and smiled that goddamn smile. If you are reading this message on your mirror, please, help me.
And there you have it. A handful of horror shorts pulled from the vault. These are some older stories and more of that classic horror vibe, instead of the more gut punch stuff I do now. Evolution. Hope you liked this blast from the past. Well, until next time.